On August 29, 1970, Chicanos and community activists marched in East Los Angeles for the National Xikana Moratorium. This demonstration opposed the white supremacist-led war against the Vietnamese people and the disproportionate number of Chicanos dying on the front lines. Since then, Chicanos throughout Aztlan and Anahuac have organized community events to remember this historic march. The following video documents a community event commemorating the National Xikana Moratorium.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 25th annual Xikana Moratorium Day. This year's theme is to stop the war on education. On August 29th, 1970, Chicanos were protesting against the Vietnam War, and 3 individuals, Angel Diaz, Lynn Ward, and Ruben Salazar, were killed. So a moment of silence for them and for all peoples who have died because of war. And next, I just want to say that there is a war on education because the school conditions students walk into are ones such as sexism, racism, poverty, gangs, abuse, violence, drugs, low quality education, lack of supplies, lack of counselors, lack of teachers of color, uncaring teachers, racist teachers, crowded classrooms, racial fights, mentality of not expecting Chicanas to succeed, buildings that look like prisons, being judged by the crowd we hang out with, water fountains not working, bathrooms unsanitary, different expectations for Anglo people than for people of color, and not learning our true history and only Eurocentric history.
My name is Gabriel Hernandez. I've been an organizer for the Xikana Moratorium Coalition since 1980, so that makes me a member of the group 25 years now. Been part of the organizing of an annual event here in Dolores Park. We call it the Xikana Moratorium Day, which is a commemoration of an event that happened, a march and a rally that happened in East Los Angeles back in 1970. On August 29, 1970, tens of thousands of Chicanos, different raza, came from the Southwest to protest the Vietnam War, and we're claiming and demanding equal rights here in the United States and our human rights in the United States. And why would we be disproportionately put on the front lines and killed in Vietnam when at home we weren't receiving an equal education, we weren't receiving equal access to jobs, we weren't receiving equal access to a number of different things. And so community organizers from the Southwest came together and had a series of marches which culminated in 1970 with the march in Los Angeles. During the rally, the sheriffs, the Los Angeles County sheriffs and the police surrounded the event and began to gas and shoot into the event and attack the families that were at the event. During that time, there was hundreds of people who were injured and 3 people who were killed that day. Lynn Ward, she was only 15 years old, a brown beret. Angel Diaz, and then renowned journalist Ruben Salazar. Ruben Salazar, during that that time was writing articles about prison issues of, the whole struggle that we were having around the term Chicano. He began to focus on police brutality, and the police many times warned him to not write articles about the police and their activities in the Chicano community. But during that march and rally, when they attacked the actual march, Ruben Salazar was blocks away from the march. He wasn't even part of the march at that time. He was in a bar, and they claimed that that there was robbery going on. They went into the bar and shot him in the back of the head with a tear gas canister, killing him instantly. And no one's ever been prosecuted for that. No one's ever gone to jail for that killing. We believe, is very deliberate. But we use this day not only as a memorial day of Chicanos and Chicanas who've given their lives for the community, but we also use it to highlight issues of the times.
Alvarez Martinez. I'm the Executive Director at the National Latina Health Organization in Oakland, and I've been coming to this event for many, many years. And today I came at 5 o'clock for the sunrise ceremony, which kind of just sets the whole day with a real spiritual balance and stability. And I'm also an Aztec dancer with Grupo Citlali. And so we start out with ceremony in the morning. We have a beautiful circle. People get to say what they want, what they feel. We offer prayers with the tobacco. And then a couple hours before the moratorium, we dance, offer more prayers with our danza, and it's a really good event. And I really, really appreciate Chicano, the Xikana Moratorium, and Tojillo, the youth group that's involved in this. So the National Latina Health Organization is 18 years old. I'm a co-founder of it, and we work within the community, the local community, the regional community, the national community, and sometimes internationally. But one of our most important work is working with youth in the schools. Again, teaching them what they need to know to make the best, most helpful decision for their lives in everything, not only around sex and sexuality, but about school, about gangs, and it's about giving them the information, the history to politicize them. So a lot of our work is politicizing the youth, and absolutely important. We also work nationally with other women of color organizations, and again, it's about the activism and the working on the politics and trying to change the way things are, because healthcare is, there's so many disparities. So we have to look at all of it. It's not only the physical disparities, it's also disparities in housing and education and everything, jobs. So we're looking at all of that because we look at health very broadly, but our work with the students in middle and high schools is extremely important because we see them changing, just really understanding the history and everything that we're teaching them and the truth about what's going on politically. And so they get awakened, and then they have a different perspective on everything, and it's like we have them for life. So I just really love the work we're doing.
We refuse to kill for you. We refuse to die for you. We know that you hide the truth behind the red, white, and the blue.
We fight for freedom, they fight for oppression. Get ready, my people, for the white man's aggression. They benefited from the ancestors' crimes that were terror to us and commit genocide. It was all about the last 500 years ago. Now it's blood for oil, and we say hell no to work the stolen land. They wanted free labor, slavery was the law, cause it worked in their favor. Slave wages and sanctions overseas are starving out brown folk like me. Corporate bigots are parasites. All their words are racist lies. They wanna see me rot in prison, but handcuffs and blindfolds won't stop my mission. We gotta rise up with a strong brown fist. We will never comply, we'll forever resist.
We refuse to kill for you. We refuse to die for you. We know that you are the truth behind the red, white, and the blue. We refuse to kill for you.
preemptive strike on the Iraqi. They the only ones who have dropped the bomb. I gotta watch them more so than Saddam. They want to stomp along our dreams. They mean jail borders never meant a thing. I see they try to silence my voice, but we just had to bring the noise. We know the time. We see their crimes. We have open minds that don't keep us blind. My sons are not their soldiers. They are modern day Mayan warriors.
We refuse to kill for you. We refuse to die for you. We know that you are the truth behind the red, white, and the blue. We refuse to kill for you. We refuse to die for you. We know that you are the truth behind the red, white, and the blue. We refuse to kill for you. We refuse to die for you. We know that you are the truth behind the red, white, and the blue.
Much love to all the brown people across the world, with a special shout out from Guatemala to Ramallah to the Palestinians. The people of the world are with you.
Resistance!
Resistance!
Hi, my name is Tony Salazar, and I'm 62 years old. I've been a resident here of San Francisco since 1976, which would make it about 28 years. Prior to that, I was born and raised in East Los Angeles. Went to schools down there, including the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA, and during 1970 was part of the organizing efforts for the original Xikana Moratorium. And coincidentally, today being August 29, 2004, it was 34 years ago on August 29, 1970, that the march took place from Atlantic Boulevard in East LA down the principal street of East Los Angeles, which is Whittier Boulevard. It was the afternoon. I remember going up on a telephone post, and looking at the sea of brown faces down Whittier Boulevard. And it was just a beautiful, awesome sight. It was the spirit that the people had, and people were going to the park where the march culminated at Laguna Park. It was called Laguna Park on the corner of Whittier and Dittman, and they renamed it Salazar Park. Obviously in the name of Ruben Salazar, who was murdered that day by the LA County Sheriffs as he was having a drink, his last drink unfortunately, at a bar called the Silver Dollar. There was also another gentleman that the cops shot down. His name was Angel Diaz, and he died in a hail of gunfire at a roadblock. The other young man, his name was Lynn Ward, also was shot by the cops, and he later died of the wounds and neglect at one of the public hospitals there in LA County. So it was very interesting what occurred that day, and unfortunately we had the deaths that occurred, but it was very much a victory of the spirit. A victory of the spirit for people. And it just wasn't people from Southern California, it was people from Berkeley, San Jose. I remember seeing the students from Berkeley. I remember seeing the Black Berets from San Jose, people from the Mission District. I remember seeing the Crusade for Justice from Denver, Colorado, people from South Texas, from the La Raza Unida Party. In addition, from Chicago, we had the Young Lords Puerto Ricanos, brothers from the Young Lords from their chapters in Chicago, and also from New York and the University of New York at Stony Brook. They all had their berets on, and they were there supporting because it also involved them. It just wasn't Chicanos dying in the Vietnam War. It was also Puerto Ricanos, Dominicanos, other Latinos as well. So it was quite a day, and it makes my heart feel, at 62 years old, as I mentioned to you, it makes my heart feel good to come here today, 34 years later, and to have this group of young people, but their group's name is Tojil, T-O-J-I-L, put this on in commemoration of that particular day. So I really want to thank them as part of the OGs, as we're now called, or veteranos, whatever. I really want to thank them. My heart goes out to them, and also in terms of, it makes my heart feel good. And sometimes when people look around at the younger generation, they see the most negative part. Well, today with this, we're seeing some of the best. And I really want to thank that particular group for commemorating this. On August the 29th, there was at least 25 to 30,000 people that had marched down from Atlantic Boulevard and then cut across to down Whittier Boulevard, which is the principal street of East Los Angeles, the downtown center, if you will, the commercial area. And it was from Atlantic Boulevard to Rubén Salazar Park, which is now called Rubén Salazar Park. As I mentioned, it was called Laguna Park at that time. It was probably about a mile and a half, the march. So at a certain point, again, I jumped up on a telephone post and could see a sea of brown faces, curb to curb. And so people were slowly coming into Salazar Park, probably around, I would say around 12:30, 1 o'clock, something like that. And people were just filtering into the playground area because there was a stage on the back of a truck. Myself, I was covering the events for the radio station I worked for at the time, which was KPFK Pacifica down in Los Angeles. So I had my tape recorder and was talking to different people, and had been with Corky Gonzalez from the Crusade for Justice earlier that day. And so people were making their speeches, but early on in the speeches, some people started throwing things from somewhere in the back. 1 or 2 cans of beer came flying, and one of them hit me right in the chest. I just happened to turn around at the right time, and the beer hit me on the chest, and it was a closed can, so definitely somebody was using it as a missile to provoke things. And there was a number of provocations from different people who weren't necessarily affiliated but wanted to see things go wrong. So that's my belief and the belief of a lot of people, and that instigated the police as well. Who knows if they were their agents working to get them to move in. And it was the LA County Sheriffs, along with numerous cities, that charged into the park around that time, and they were waiting, and we didn't see them, but they just came in, and they came in their typical line, and they took out their mace, and they took out their tear gas, and they shot the tear gas, and they tear gassed old ladies, young ladies, children, men, whatever. And it's a funny thing, at a certain point, you see the police and the sheriffs sweep across the playground right there, field, and then on another instance, 2 minutes later, you see people throwing back the tear gas at the cops, their own tear gas. You see people lobbing it back at the police, and that was a sight to see. I'm gonna tell you, Steve, seeing the big fat asses of the police run the other way was really something for me, because usually what we used to see in East LA was the sharp end of their nightsticks on our heads, you know. So it was interesting to see their fat asses running down the field and people throwing stuff at them. They'd get to the end of the field, regroup, and then it would come back again. So it happened 2-3 times where it would charge and then run, charge and then run. Then after that, people were just tired and gassed and what have you. And even people around the neighborhood were opening up their houses to people who had been gassed. And I'm talking about children, senoras, moms, and young women, and men as well. So I took off in a different direction, knowing which way the cops are coming. Mind you, we're in LA County, where the sheriffs run the law enforcement there. So I took off in another direction, and I ran into Major Boulevard. I was walking, I ran into my friend Corky Gonzalez from the Crusade for Justice. He said, jump in. There was some guys in the back of this truck, and it was a stake bed truck. And I sat in the front because the guy driving the truck was from Salinas, and Corky being from Colorado, and all the guys being from Denver as well, they didn't know the way around East LA, so I jumped in, and just as we crossed into the city limits, we were 2 blocks from the city limits of LA, the LAPD, their helicopters swarmed all over us, and the cops came out from nowhere, surrounded our truck, took me out, and they put a gun to my head, big old 350 Magnum, I'm going to tell you. And I heard that sucker click, and he put it to my head and had me against the truck. And he said in a loud voice, he said to me, he says, "What's your name?" And I said, "Tony." And he yelled at the guys in the back of the truck, "We know you got guns up there. If anybody, a pop goes off, Tony right here gets it right in the head with my 350 Magnum." So I had my thing. I said, "Oh Lord, what's happening?" So we were next to the housing projects, Estrada Courts, called Barrio Nuevo, and thank God for the people, La Raza, that came out from the housing projects, and they were right there, and the cops told them to go in, and they wouldn't go into the houses. They just stood right there with their arms crossed, and they watched the cops. So the cops had to take out a different tone, because if they're going to shoot us, they had witnesses, and these people would not budge. So the cop kept poking me with a barrel of the gun in my head, and I thought, this guy is so nervous, he's going to shoot me just on the count of his nervousness, not forget what those guys are doing, he's going to pop my head off, you know. So everybody got off, they tied us up, and they took us away. Our final charge was armed robbery, and we said, how can we rob it? You know, what's a probable cause? Is it possible that 28 guys in a blue truck all jumped in, robbed the store and all jumped in the same truck. That doesn't make sense, does it? So anyway, Corky ended up serving 3 months for whatever, I forgot what it was, and they cut the rest of us loose. And that was the moratorium. And again, the cops confiscated my tapes. And I tried to get them back, and they would not give me back my tapes because I had a lot of good stuff, very descriptive narrative of what was going on as the cops were beating up people.
My name is Berkeley, California. I was born in Oakland. My parents are Jose Luis Orozco and Catherine Downs. I've come from a family of activists. They've been very active since before I was born. My father does political music and music for children. So that's kind of what brought me into this type of environment. You know, when I was young, I would go with him to the marches with the farm workers, and just saw a lot of things and was exposed to a lot. And it really had an impact on my life and just my perspective. I think it's really important that we continue these movements, that we educate each other, that we put all our energy that we can into supporting these things, that we teach our children, that we expose them to these ways and go back to the ways, at the same time evolve them and move forward, because it's constantly changing. We've been constantly changing. Like in danza, we look at our trajes, and some people want to be or talk about a traditional way, but the way I see it, things have always been evolving and changing, and so we use the materials that we have around us, and things will constantly be changing. The music, the songs, the dances, and just that we stay strong and keep it up.